Well, listen, first of all, we had a very good meeting with the President and the Secretary of the Treasury and Larry Summers and to talk about the bill. I'm very grateful to my colleagues in the Senate last evening that supported this landmark piece of legislation to complement the work that Barney has done back in December in the House of Representatives. And we look forward now in the coming next few weeks here to take these two bills. As Barney has said, and he's got a wonderful sense of history, this is one of those rare occasions when the two bills really are very close to each other. There's not a great deal of difference. We need to take the best parts of both bills and marry them together and present our colleagues in both chambers with our final product. But again, we believe that the public is correct in insisting that we not leave them vulnerable to exactly the same kind of problems that they witnessed over the last several years, with too big to fail, too many jobs lost, too many homes lost, retirement incomes evaporating, home values declining by 30% or more, and to give this country once again a sense of confidence and optimism about their financial institutions and the financial structures of our country. We need to harmonize these ideas as well. We've now come to the clear recognition that we no longer live in an isolated place, that events that happen in small countries in the Caribbean can have a huge impact on the global economy. So we're going to need to work with our friends around the globe as well to make sure we have some consistent and harmonized rules as well. So it's a strong day for America. This was not a battle about Democrats beating Republicans. I'm very grateful to Susan Collins, Olympia Snowe, Scott Brown, Chuck Grassley, who joined with us last night in supporting this legislation. My hope is there'll be more when we get done with the final conference report. We can end up with more bipartisan support for these efforts. But again, I'm very grateful to Barney Frank, the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, done a great job over there. A strong bill, a good bill. And again, the combination of the best parts of both, I think, will even make it better.
I very much agree with the Senator. As I've said, I can't remember ever seeing two major pieces of legislation, really historic pieces of legislation, come out of the two houses so close. And that's not accidental. We've been working together on this since the crisis hit in 2008. And we worked, and much of this, by the way, you can see foreshadowed in the speech that George Bush's Secretary of the Treasury made, Hank Paulson, in March of 2008. Things like the need for the dissolution authority and how we deal with that. So there was a bipartisan tradition here. Unfortunately, it didn't always carry through. Senator Dodd thanked the 4 Republicans who voted for the bill in the Senate. I would thank the Republicans who voted for the bill in the House if there were any, and I would hold out to them the prospect of being thanked if any of them decide to break party discipline and vote the way I know a lot of them want to vote but are intimidated from doing. We will have a conference, I think, that will work well. It will be conducted, the formal parts, in public. That means that no agreements reached, no compromises, which obviously are being discussed, will be made part of anything without being publicly presented and voted on and discussed. And I understand the urgency for the financial stability of the country in getting this done quickly. Stability, knowing what's going on is important. I think people can be pretty confident. It's hard for me to think that this is going to take us more than a month. So I believe the President will be able to sign this bill before we leave. One other thing I want to address is for the July 4th recess. One other thing I want to address is this suggestion that, well, you've solved some of the problems from before, what about the future? We're well aware of this. This is a bill that does deal with, and part of what we have to deal with is the recurring thing that comes up in our economy of new phenomena that haven't been dealt with. So we deal with securitization here and its dilemmas without suppressing it. We regulate credit default swaps for the first time. These were new phenomena. But we don't simply look at what was. We know we have an industry that will innovate and an industry that will try to get around some of these things. So in addition to putting rules in place for what we have seen, we've empowered the regulators going forward. In fact, we have instructed the regulators going forward and given them principles so that they will be able to deal with new phenomena. This is not a static bill. This is a framework that allows for appropriate, innovative regulation going forward that will meet innovative financial activity.
Bankers still seem to think that they can strip out some of the more onerous provisions to them in the conference.
I wouldn't basically take a lot of investment advice from those banks if they're not better at that than they are at politics.
What did the President tell you?
He congratulated Senator Dodd because he just got the bill through, and getting things through in the Senate is a little more difficult. But there is one point I do want to make. And in one sense, Senator Dodd had an advantage over me. And I want to address, there's a kind of cynical view of American politics, which you quoted correctly from which is, big money does it and the big banks do it. Last year, when the House debated the bill, health care was taking up most of the attention. And so the bill was almost an inside game. Health care having been done, this year the Senate conducted its bill in full public light, and you saw that. The big banks didn't win anything that they shouldn't have won. They weren't able to block anything that should have happened. Anybody who's looking for a demonstration that when the public is engaged, democracy works well, gets it from this bill. And just look at the contrast. Frankly, there were a couple of votes on the floor of the House last year with regard to derivatives where I was on the losing side. I believe I'd be on the winning side if we had them today because of this. But I will say these old assumptions that the big money gets everything they want, it's very hard to see how anybody can look at the process in the Senate and not realize that informed public opinion working with the Senate leadership that Senator Dodd and others provided prevailed.
Did you assure the President that you'll have a bill for him before the July 4th recess?
I believe we will, yeah.
Did you tell the President that?
Yeah. He's listening now anyway. So
will the Lincoln derivatives provision survive?
Look, we're going to have they're going to have a conference. There's no point in getting into the weeds with you. Obviously, there's a lot of issues. Well, I understand that, but
there's also, look, we aren't able to. Senator Dodd and I are two members of a conference committee. This is going to be an open process. We can't arrogate and dictate to people.
That's exactly what I was going to say there.
What do you think of the Lincoln provision?
That we're going to have a conference. We can't pre-conference it. When you're dealing with a conference, you're dealing with a whole bunch of things that are interrelated. And it's also the case that we now want to get into the conference provision process in which we all, we're going to be talking about it. So these things are all going to be discussed. And I will guarantee you this is whatever the final resolution of any of these issues is, they will be presented publicly in conference and they will be subject to votes.
Let me mention something. I should have mentioned Harry Reid, the majority leader, because he allowed a process to go forward. I know everyone's focused on the details of the bills, and obviously that's the most important thing. But the Senate did something it hasn't done in a long time. And as someone who's down maybe in the last 30 or 40 legislative days after 30 years, to watch the Senate over a 4-week period have 60 amendments be considered on the floor of the Senate, half of which were adopted, where for the first 3 weeks it was a 51 votes that got your amendment adopted or defeated. That hadn't been done in a long time. And a lot of complaints about exactly the point that Barney's making. There were members who earlier on said to me, look, if it's a fair and open process here, that'll mean an awful lot. And I think it did to several members. Where this bill includes a lot of ideas that were offered by Republicans as well as Democrats. It was a long process. We went back many, many months. But I think it's important that the public understand exactly, not just in a conference where people can watch what happens, but actually on the floor of the United States Senate, there was a full-throated debate of ideas. And there was decisions made about accepting or rejecting those ideas. And that may seem unimportant at this moment, but to me it's terribly important that the institution of the Congress of the United States can conduct that kind of open, full debate and produce the kind of results we did.
Yeah, let me just reinforce that, too, because, again, good news sometimes gets taken for granted. And when there are procedural issues, they become major. This was a very open process in the Senate. It was a very open process in the House. On our side, it just went. We had more time to do it in committee, but we had a lot of markups, as many of you know. We had, again, lots of amendments, Republican amendments adopted. You look at the House and the Senate together, this was exactly the way the legislative process is supposed to work at its most open. And I do think that's contributed to our being able to get it through.
Congressman, when you passed your bill in the House, the Obama administration had not yet endorsed the Volcker Rule. Do you think the House will be comfortable with the Volcker Rule in something approximating the form
Let me
in the
repeat
Senate bill?
Actually, Senator Dodd gets to interrupt me now. I apologize.
No.
We are not going to be talking piece by piece about this. Look, there's a conference. We are the chairs of our respective conference groups, but it is an open process. There are going to be other members, and we're going to discuss this, and there's no point in it wouldn't be appropriate to try and dictate to the conference now before we have it. We want to have an open process.
Well, I'm not asking about your opinion. I'm saying, is your sense of the House that the House would be comfortable with something like what the Senate has done?
Well, if I'm not going to speak for me, I'm sure as hell not going to speak for the House. Yeah. I mean, you've got the the greater includes the less. The answer is we will see about these things. Again, it's going to be open. You're going to get those answers, and you're going to get them in a process where it's not just me and Senator Dodd, in which there are going to be, a lot of other members, House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, and that's the way it's supposed to work.
Chairman, the U.S. Chamber says that this bill is too tough and it's going to kill credit and restrict and kill jobs. What would you say to that?
That if I could arrange a tour for them to say that in about 8 places in my district, I would be very grateful.
And the status quo has been great. 8.5 million jobs, my last count, been cost because of what these institutions either did do or didn't do. 7 million homes have been lost because of what they did or didn't do as industry, not to mention the loss of value and the loss of decline of wealth in this country. So it's rather arrogant.